And here it is, the long-awaited update to Mundo. Ever since it was announced that he would be getting the VGU, I always said one thing. His old lore was decent. It didn't really need any big changes. All Riot had to do with the update was to push his story forward. That's why I was curious to see what would Riot do with him. But now, since it's finally here, and because it is not the longest, let's have a look at Dr. Mundo's newly updated bio. In the wards of Zaun's infamous asylum, a single monstrous figure roams the halls. His methods are bold, his bone saw is sharp, and his patients are terrified. For this man is no doctor at all, except in the fancy of his own mind. Though his true name has been lost to both time and memory, Dr. Mundo was once an enforcer for one of Zaun's most powerful camp barons. Known for his boisterous affability, he was remarkably good-natured for a man who made his living off physical intimidation. He was always quick with a familiar nickname and a friendly clap on the back, and often blissfully unaware of the toes he was stepping on. It wasn't long before he had stepped firmly on the toes of his boss. Determined to make an example of his underling, the camp baron had him committed to Oswald Asylum, a place well known for its inhumane treatment and questionable cures. The baron watched with satisfaction as his enforcer was placed in restraints and dragged away to the padded confines of the asylum's most secure cell. As months went by, the enforcer suffered unspeakable horrors at the hands of his supposed caregivers. Experimental treatments were rendered without concern for the patient's well-being. Nerves were prodded, lobes were severed, and unproved medicines were administered in large quantities. The enforcer began to change, his large frame gaining more muscle by the day. His brain, however, suffered a far worse fate. As he lost all memory of his past life, the enforcer struggled to make sense of the cruel world around him. He looked down at his old restraining jacket. It almost resembled the white coats of the medical professionals that surrounded him. Misreading the words on his own uniform, he began to assume a new name and new profession for himself. "I must be a doctor too. Why else would I be in this wretched asylum?" he reasoned. "And all these other people must be my patients." At last, the day came when the camp baron arrived to discharge his enforcer from the asylum. To his surprise, there was no one to greet him in the lobby. The halls were empty and dead silent, save for the faint, incoherent babbling of a deranged patient in a room at the end of the hallway. The baron entered the room to a horrifying sight. Scattered across the floor were countless bodies, staff and patients alike, dismembered beyond recognition. Standing above them, a hulking purple monstrosity blathered unintelligibly as a large blue tongue lolled out the side of its gaping mouth. Muscles bulged grotesquely beneath its undersized garments, and its fists tightened around the handle of a surgical saw. The baron turned pale as his gaze found the face of the monster, and recognized it as his old enforcer. The enforcer, who recalled nothing of his old boss, saw only another patient in desperate need of treatment. The purple thing lumbered toward the camp baron, wagging his bone saw in anticipation. The baron drew his Chemtech pistol and fired. The shot tore through the looming mass in front of him, staggering the monster, but only for a brief moment. The hole in the creature's flesh quickly closed as new slabs of muscle rapidly regrew over the wound. The monster paused, eyed the baron quizzically, and uttered, "You sick? Need help?" Mimicking what he had seen performed countless times by the asylum's former practitioners, the enforcer threw the man on a nearby gurney, strapped his arms into the restraints, and prepared his instruments for surgery. The camp baron turned pale as he recognized the grim fate that awaited him. The ensuing surgery, like so many before and after it, was not successful. The burgeoning doctor added the remains of the latest patient to the pile on the floor. Though he was saddened he couldn't save them, he knew he had done all he could. Besides, he would have other chances. Zaun was full of sick people just waiting to be cured. With a smile returning to his face, he left the hospital and set out into the streets to find more patients. Well, I have to say, I am torn on this story. You see, on one side I was hoping they wouldn't retcon anything in his old story. But at the same time, in the new bio, they retconned so little they didn't even need to change his story at all. Like really, not much has changed, and still the things that changed feel like they didn't even have to. For example, the entire part where Mundo was taken into the asylum as a child was totally cut out. Now we know that he was a normal human up until he was adult. And he is purple and really large because of all the experiments done in the asylum. In his old lore, his appearance was the mystery. Now the mystery is kinda gone, and we got nothing to replace it. If you look again at what just happened, you may realize that Mundo's lore is kinda stuck in place. He went crazy because people experimented on him, and that's where the story ends without a clear path to go in the future. So overall, I am torn on the fact that I can't decide if I am glad that they didn't change much, or if I'm sad that they didn't change much. Regardless, there are still some interesting things which we can talk about here. First of all, at the beginning of the bio, we learned that Mundo was put into the asylum because he stepped on his boss's toes. Now, under normal circumstances, I believe that stepping on someone's toes would just mean that Mundo somehow made his boss angry. But since it is Mundo that we are talking about, which is pretty much the only comical character we have, I am pretty sure Mundo literally stepped on his boss's toes. The boss didn't appreciate it, and then the rest happened. Also, the bio explained that while Mundo forgot his own name, he thought he was called Mundo because he looked down and he read the name on his jacket upside down. If you go to his splash art, you can actually see that his name spelled in Zoanite can be read as Mundo upside down. But here's the thing, since this is what the Piltover or Zoanite language looks like, that means that they don't know how to read our alphabet. So how would Mundo read this as Mundo? I guess the only explanation is that besides the weird Zoanite letters, they also use our letters in their alphabet. And so Mundo could still read that as Mundo. Anyway, I still thought that it was a cool detail that they added this into his art. On a side note, this also translates into his skin. There you can see that on the table his name is also upside down, because that's how he would read it if he leaned over the desk, but also notice that from his perspective, the phone is also upside down, because should he look down, he would also read it as Mundo upside down. So I wonder if in his actual model, he's going to hold the phone upside down. Anyway, back to the canon universe. I also noticed that when it comes to his abilities, his kit makes the weird purple things on his shoulder quite important, though these were never specifically mentioned in the bio. From the description of the ability, we just know that these are some kind of chemical canisters. But here's the thing, the entire ability is kinda out of character. I understand that the point is that when someone is trying to crown control him, Mundo doesn't move and they just knock off some of his augments. But it's still strange to see that these augments were never mentioned anywhere. And on top of that, Mundo can regain health by picking the canisters back up. Which is kinda strange because, once again, in the bio, Mundo is quite stupid. He has no idea what's happening around him. If he saw that a chemical canister fell down on the ground, would he actually pick it up and smack it back into his body thinking that it would heal him? I mean, considering what he had done to the people around him, maybe? But the point still stands. I wish these chemical canisters were explained in the bio. But as it is right now, we have no idea what these are. Though maybe they will be explained in the color story, which should arrive when Mundo goes live. That is assuming he gets a color story. With all of that said, many people pointed out that the canisters are purple, which, I'll be honest, can tie into what we have seen in the Arcane series, where the strange purple chemical seems to be very important, and it is tied to advanced technology and to physical strength. So now, even though the bio pretty much confirmed that Mundo can't be the main villain of Arcane, as some people thought, at the same time, I wouldn't be surprised if that series at least mentioned Mundo. After all, this purple chemical is appearing more and more often. But that is it for the new Mundo. Lastly, there is only one more thing to mention. Despite the fact that Mundo's lore didn't really move anywhere, even though Mundo is supposed to go wherever he pleases, and even though they took out the only mystery Mundo had, and that was where did he come from and why is he purple, instead they did actually give us a new mystery. Who is the raccoon? It was confirmed it is Mundo's nurse, but why isn't it in the bio?